Alright, I'm gonna do a little janky breakdown of The Old Man and the Sea. I love this book. There's a lot of books out there I love, but this one is just special. Um, but I'm gonna break it down a little bit. I really like this story, man. It's such a great. It's just so. I'd say it's a. I think it's a masterpiece. In my opinion, it's a masterpiece. But it's a simple story. It's a super, super, super simple story, which I think also makes it a masterpiece. Is because he can take something so simple and just turn it into something so profound. I mean, I don't know if it's so super profound, but it touches on a lot of elements in life. But So I'm just gonna. This is just a breakdown, and this isn't anything great. Obviously, it's just some notes I took from listening to the audiobook. Which, by the way, you can listen to it on YouTube. They got it up free. It's Charlton Heston, who I love his voice. He's a great actor. Passed away, but he was a great actor of the 20th century. Got a lot of great movies. Great voice, perfect voice for audiobooks. He does a really good job on that. You can find it on YouTube. But I went and listened to it last night, and I kind of just took some notes a little bit. But it's such a, first of all, it's a timely book in the sense that it fits right into the time that Hemingway was alive. I'm not sure when it was published. I want to say late 1930s, 1940s, something like that. But it really fits in perfect with the kind of culture that they had back then. It was, you know, I think Captain Courageous is a great film. Go watch that with Spencer Tracy. Those are great decades for film. Just fantastic. Those old films are so cool, so cool. But Captain's Courageous was written by Rudyard Kipling, who's another amazing author. Hemingway, Kipling, these guys are just Mark Twain and lots and lots of great writers in the 19th and early 20th century, before things became quote unquote contemporary or whatever. They were still kind of putting out classics back then, and they made the movie Captain's Courageous around that time, so it kind of fits in. The Old Man and the Sea, when Hemingway wrote it, fits into kind of that adventurous. That was those decades where people were trying to like explore and become adventurous, and it was also a lot of existential type thinking and like writing and stuff like that. What's life all about? And there's so many existential elements in The Old Man and the Sea. Here's a guy who's trying to figure out what life's all about. He's trying to, he has all these like almost childlike wonderings. And I think it's interesting that they juxtapose the child as well as the old man. It's almost, I mean, it's such a brilliant book, because what you almost don't realize is like the child and the old man are kind of two different sides of the same person, and it might not even, you could look at it like it's metaphorical or whatever. There may never even been a child. It might have just been like he's using these elements to sort of describe who this man is, and the man, even who the man is doesn't really matter as much as what the man represents. The old man, he represents all of us. He represents our search for meaning, our search for purpose. He represents, the kind of questions we ask the universe, the kind of questions we wonder about right and wrong and our conscience and things like that. But it's a simple plot, right? It's a simple plot because the book is less about what happens and more about the internal dialogue as it happens. Okay, meaning, yeah, it's a simple story in the sense that it's just a guy who goes out and catches a fish, and yes, and he juxtaposes like baseball. He uses a lot of, Joe DiMaggio. He uses a lot of like his concept of what greatness is, which is somebody who overcomes obstacles, or somebody who's talented, or somebody who, and it's a very American concept of greatness, conquer the world type of concept, and that was big back then. You got Jack London, The Call of the Wild, fantastic book. Jack London, The Call of the Wild, where he kind of touches on a lot of those same elements. Go read that book, man. That's a beast of a book. But it's just about, figuring out who you are and in relation to nature. But I would say it's a bit different. Hemingway is different than the Call of the Wild, because Call of the Wild is, I mean, they're both books about overcoming obstacles, or I should say overcoming elements, the earth's harshness and things like that, and conquering, in the face of adversity. Kind of, it's true, but the Old Man and the Sea is less. That's not really what the Old Man and the Sea is about. However, with Call of the Wild, that is what that book's about. It is about, kind of the strength and courage and all those kind of stuff. But that's not what Old Man and the Sea is about. The Old Man and the Sea is about looking into the mirror of what it means to be human. Like looking into, what are we doing? Why are we killing? Why are we, why do we have to do these things? And it's what's really, the movie is really, or the book I should say, is really, really about. And I think they did make a movie. Is it Spencer Tracy? I forget. He might have been Spencer Tracy. Yeah, I think it was Spencer Tracy. So, but I don't think the movie is as good. You have to read the book. The book is the best. But anyway, it's about looking, what are we as a human being, and it touches it brilliantly, because it's like as you get older, like I said, he juxtaposes the boy and the old man. When you're young, and I love how he uses that boy as an example. You're just kind of simple. The boy's very simple. He's very, he just, he's not complex at all. But the old man is complex. Like he's thinking, and he's trying to figure things out, and he's trying to, like he's got all these wonderings, and it kind of just shows like we don't really know a lot, and we're just kind of we're just kind of going through life, But it's definitely a book about existentialism, for sure. It's a book about philosophy and existentialism. And there's no real antagonist, right? You might think like, oh, the antagonist is the elements of the earth, or the antagonist is the sea, or the antagonist is the shark, or the antagonist maybe is the marlin, that he's trying to, rope in. But no, and you might even think the antagonist is him. You might even think he's the antagonist, or old age is the antagonist. But no, none of that. There really is no antagonist. It's just a book asking questions. It's just like, hey, what are we doing here? Like, what's going on? What, why do I gotta do this? Why am I out here catching these fish? Or why do I have to kill? And why are the sharks killing? And why? It's just questioning, And I would say that the Bible answers those questions. I would say the Bible answers all questions. Why do things kill? Well, it talks about it in Genesis. It talks about how, the earth became corrupted. Right? After the fall of man, the earth became corrupted, and Satan corrupted it as well. So the reason why animals kill each other, and the reason why we have this nature and all this stuff, is because, the brutalness of nature is because we live in a fallen world. It's corrupt. Right? So that's the answer. And people might say, oh no, it's just the circle of life, the animals have to kill each other in order to continue to live, and it's just the way, the thing, life is. But that's not necessarily true. That's not necessarily true. But I don't want to argue theology. I'm not just here to argue or talk about theology. I'm just, linking these things and saying, hey, there's an answer here. But it's interesting, I love this book because it's like an open. There's a lot of open-ended stuff about this book. He doesn't try to answer the questions. He doesn't even attempt it, because that's not what he's trying to do. It's not what it's about. He's not trying to answer these problems. He's just proposing them, and he's using it beautifully. And what he's really saying, what he's really saying at the core, is that mankind is curious. Mankind is kind of lost. Mankind doesn't really know, what they're doing, and many, many people in mankind are just kind of simple, and they just don't know. And it's so beautiful. I would link it. I think it's close to Steinbeck. I think it's similar to Steinbeck, and it's not as similar to Call. It has elements of Call of the Wild, but the type of writing he's doing here is similar to what Steinbeck did. Go read Steinbeck. Anything from Steinbeck is awesome. Steinbeck is really trying to touch on humanity and like the but he uses some negative elements, bad things that happen to humans and stuff. But there's so much humanity in Steinbeck's writings, which is wonderful. And there's a lot of humanity in The Old Man and the Sea. It really is a book about humanity, but it's also, I think it's a male book. It's written for males. I say down here, there's a lot of elements of machismo and pride, right? Which is not bad. It's not toxic, right? Feminism thinks, oh, masculinity is toxic. Actually, he's showing a lot of good aspects of masculinity here. He's saying, he's pointing out how strong the old man is, how, and he's even showing his humanity, but he's juxtaposing it along with this, he's highlighting it along this backdrop of like machismo and like, conquering in the face of extreme adversity, conquering Earth's elements, and this was more talked about back then. It was more popular back then. Men had a lot of more testosterone back then. Men were out trying to conquer the world back then a lot. So it fits right in, but it's also what makes it such a masterpiece and so beautiful is he's juxtaposing it right alongside the quest for purpose, the quest for meaning, and the quest for all these questions, asking all these questions of why are we doing this, what's this, which ultimately should lead to God, right? Ultimately should lead to God, but he doesn't try to answer any of it. He just tells this story, right? Which I think Steinbeck does too. Steinbeck doesn't really try to answer anything. He leaves the answers up to the reader, which I really like. I really like that. And then it has elements of village life and family, right? The concepts of friendship and elderly passing down of values, and the hero's battle element, which is similar to, the Odyssey, obviously. And then it might be a little bit similar to Don Quixote, right? There's a little bit of Don Quixote elements in there, because, it's a little bit frivolous what he's doing to just catch the fish and to be... And it shows also resolve. It shows how men are resolved to conquer something. And then I do think that's a kind of noble masculine thing that men risk themselves. He shows all the damage he took to his hands and his back and his body, taking in this fish. And it was less about the meat and less about the cost of the fish and more about the hero's journey of conquering something. So who knows we don't know what happened to the old man after this story. Doesn't say, but anything. He could have been hailed as a hero. Probably, I think he's alluding to that he would have been hailed as a hero for bringing in such a big fish and going through such a strong struggle, right, and conquering the odds, right. But the fish is, when it came back, it was pretty much almost all eaten, right? It was just a lot of it was just the carcass left. So he didn't get much meat out of it. He didn't get much profit, but it was about, which tells you what it's about. The reason why that is that it's not about what he gained from it materialistically. It's about what he conquered and what the human will is able to do and overcome and things like that. But I don't think ultimately that's what the story is ultimately about. As that's going on, he's got this inner dialogue, and really that's what the story is about. The story is about him asking questions, and it's childlike. He's got these childlike questions, which again I think that's why the only really characters in this entire book are really just the old man and the child, because the child is a representative of the old man. The child represents his childlike wonder and just childlike questions, which I think again is really what this book is about. So the narration, I thought it was first person, but it's actually third person omniscient is what Google says. He's got dialogue where he talks and he's talking a lot to himself. So it kind of teeter-totters between his dialogue and talking to himself, and then kind of what he's thinking to the third person omniscience, which is very nice, very, very good. So we see philosophic and existential themes juxtaposed with the cold and sometimes brutal reality of existence, of life and death. That's why I touched on that a bit. So it plays. I get the impression that it plays out a bit like a dream, in the sense that, like, he might have been dreaming this whole thing. Who knows? He could have been dreaming the entire thing. But it's just written kind of like a dream, which I think is really cool. Just the way that, because it might be so fantastical for him, this old man, to wrestle this fish for like 2 or 3 days or however long he battled this fish. And then also the fish is kind of like, the fish could be representative of life struggles in general. It could be representative of the man trying to wrestle a purpose, or find a purpose, or find his hero's journey. Because a lot of something within man and men in general, mankind, but men in general, that wants to find this hero's journey and wants to become a hero of his own destiny, a hero of his own life, things like that. So it totally nails that, right? Totally plays into that. But so Hemingway dumbs a lot of his idealism. Did I write that right? As well as his regrets into man's thinking. No, I didn't. Dumbs. That's the wrong word. So I would say Hemingway adds a lot of his idealism as well as his regrets into the man's thinking. So we see a lot of idealistic concepts, almost like, I had to Google when I was listening to this story. I had to Google if he was a vegan or not, because he's like talking so much about how like it's wrong to kill and the animals, it's and stuff like that. But he was absolutely not a vegan. He was very much a meat eater. So it's interesting. It might shows that like he had some regrets for that. It might have, because I know he was a hunter and stuff. So it might show that he actually, even though he killed animals for sport and for food or whatever, he also maybe had felt some regret for that, for taking life. And of course we know he was in World War I. So he saw death. He saw a lot of death, and he kind of compares I think he compares animal death as if it's sacred to human life, which we all know is sacred, right? And we don't think animal life is sacred, but that's an element of like Native Americans. They would view animals as sacred, and they would be very careful when they took life, or they would be very honorable when they did it, in the sense that, I don't know if all of them were like that, but they would, they had a different viewpoint, as opposed to like Europeans or whoever who just kill animals and they don't think twice about it. They're just like, well, that's our food, they don't think twice about it. But he seemed to have a lot of sentiment about it, a lot of like almost regret, or like it was part of his conscience, where he really felt bad about it almost. So it's an interesting, it's an interesting juxtaposition in there. It's an interesting placement of that element in there, because it shows that maybe Hemingway had he was deeper than we really thought, or he was more sensitive than we really thought, right? He wasn't just this avid machismo alpha male hunter kind of guy. He actually was pretty sensitive, or pretty, he maybe even regretted a lot of stuff, or regretted killing animals, things like that. It makes you think about it, right? But there's a lot of idealism in this book. A lot of his concepts of what makes men strong, and it's very physical. It's very overcoming odds and things like that, which is fine. And again, that's that's part and parcel of that time period, right? And it's true to who he was as a person, in that he was an avid hunter, and he was a outdoorsman, and he would go on safaris and things like that. And it was big back then. That's a lot of people like to do. It was kind of like the sports of back then, where like now people try to men try to do really good at sports and things like that, and that's very popular. But back then it was like adventure and hiking and safaris and things like that. So hunting and the danger element and overcoming odds in real life was almost like a hobby. It was pretty interesting. So he beautifully shows that with great fatigue and great hardship, a man begins to self-reflect and question things. This is beautifully woven into the storyline. What seems like a simple story turns out to be a wonderful exposition on existentialism. He juxtaposes the strength and endurance of humanity with the battle for survival. The old man compares himself to the fish. He questions why we have to do what we have to do to survive. So I think it's an interesting element that, he definitely touches on like the fatigue and great hardship that men have to go to achieve their goals and things like that, which is underrated. It doesn't get talked about, but men break their backs. They put themselves through so much stress and pain just for success, which is just an interesting thing that he really breaks that down and talks about that. So there's just so many different elements in this book. So he balances the ironies of human life and survival with the deeper questions of existence in the light of eternity. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that he's out on the water and he's reflecting and it's almost like a dream, and he's doing all this like, existential finding your purpose kind of talk, and like, what's this really all about? Why do I kill the fish and the fish kill each other, and like, is this the right way to live? Kind of, there's just questions that we all have, and we're all here. It's like, what are we doing? Why are we, a lot of those elements of like that really people have questions about, like, why are we on this earth? Are we parasites? Are we just, why are we killing the animals? They're our food, and maybe that's not right because they're human not they're human beings, but they're beings, they're creatures that have feelings and stuff. So it's really kind of a sensitive book in a lot of ways, where it shows his sensitivities as a human being. Pretty interesting, The old man battles with his conscience, which is bothered by the harsh realities of staying alive. I think we all do that to whatever degree. We're just like, man, why do I got to do this or do that? It's not, there's got to be something more to life, kind of thing. But let's see. I saw the Google explanation was pretty good of this. Hemingway's writing style in The Old Man and the Sea is and beyond is concise, straightforward, and realistic, a departure from other writers of his time. Many have referred to this style as the iceberg theory, a simple style of writing that reveals minimal detail on the surface with deeper meaning hidden below. Yeah, that's a really good explanation. That's a really good way to put it. So yeah, like I said, it's just this. He's a very like blunt writer in a lot of ways, but he's got deeper meaning a lot in what he talks about. Very philosophical. He's very philosophical, but he does it in a really kind of subtle way, which I really like. He really, and even I think you might think like, why does he keep talking about baseball and like, what does that have to do with it? I think that matters. I think that plays into it because like we view sports and baseball and things as like, for some reason we view it as like this quest to conquer, and even as males we kind of have this machismo of like doing these amazing things and then getting rewarded for it or getting praise. And it's kind of like, I guess you could say it goes back to like the hunter days when the hunter went out and he killed the prey or whatever, and he would come back and he'd be the hero of the village because he killed the prey. That's kind of what I think it is with men, what we kind of have these fantasies about. I think that's a male fantasy. I really do. And that's why men like sports. Men like sports because it's about glory. It's about glory in and being awarded for your accolade, getting accolades for your excellence, right? And so this book is really about that. It's really about like conquering and getting rewarded for the excellence. Although it doesn't say that he came back and he's a hero, or maybe it does. I can't remember that. Anyway, I don't think it does quite as much, or maybe it does. Maybe it does say that. But I think either way, if it does or it doesn't, that's still what it's about, or that's still what, that's still part of it, right? But what's so interesting is like, I played basketball and I had a little teeny glimpse of glory and like being popular and being uplifted for being really good at something, And what I experienced was a kind of emptiness in that. What I experienced was somewhat of just, it was kind of hollow. Like I didn't really feel like it was what I thought it was going to be. And lots of people feel, when they get successful, they're like, man, I thought I was going to be really happy when I was successful. I thought I was going to, feel like, all my dreams would come true or whatever. But really, I just feel kind of empty. And you realize, like, there's something more than just that, right? And I think he dips into that and delves into that when he's talking. It's almost like, because if it was really just about conquering, if it was really just about the hero's epic, right, the hero's epic journey, then it would have just been there wouldn't have been anything really else. He would have just only focused on the fish and catching the fish, which he does talk about that a lot, but he subtly uses these little pockets of time where he's reflecting and he's thinking, and it's so perfect, because when you're going through a hardship, like, you do that a lot, you'll be like, man, what am I doing, or like, what's this all about? You it's just natural. I don't know, at least for me, like, it's just how, when you're going through an extreme hardship, you just have these weird questions, these weird existential questions, like, what is this all about, like, so he does that so beautifully, and that's why I think this is such a masterpiece, because it's so simply written, and it's like, yeah, it's kind of like odd. It's kind of like, it's kind of like an Odyssey, where he's going on this journey and he's conquering the odds and whatever. But there's this humanity that's kind of woven into the story, where it shows, like, well, he's really questioning what life's all about. He's really questioning, and it's like, so it's really not about that. It's not about just the cold, cut and dry, okay, I conquered this thing, now I'm a hero, I climbed the mountain and now I'm the hero kind of thing. No, it's like, why am I climbing this mountain? What am I doing? Like why do I have to do this? Or like, why, and he does that so subtly, so subtle. You might not even, you might miss it. You might not even catch it, because you're just focused on, like, because he's taking you on this ride. He's taking you on this journey of, like, catching the fish. And so you think you might not even catch it, because you're so focused on is he going to catch the fish? What's going to happen? Is he, but really he just peppers in these little, he doesn't hit you over the head with it. I love that. He doesn't hit you over the head with it. He's meaning it's not preachy, right? It's not preachy at all. You won't find any trace or element of preachiness here, right? He just does it so subtly, and it's really, so it's meant for, like, it's the right ears to hear it, and then you hear it and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. I get what he's trying to say here. He's really trying to say there's something deeper in life. What are we doing here? What's this all about, is kind of what he's trying to say, because that's what the man is doing. The man is reflecting as he's fighting this fish. He's reflecting on life, and he's like, why do I have to do this, and what's this about? And then it shows his machismo and his, where he gets he makes himself confident again, like, oh, Joe DiMaggio is a hero, and I can be a hero kind of thing, and which is so true to life. It's so true, at least to the male life, because that's what men go through. We go through these extreme hardships, and we got to go conquer things. And you think, oh, what are you talking about? Like, well, are you going to a career? Are you making money? Are you paying a more, that's kind of conquering. Like, and you're going to struggle, and you're going to suffer doing that, right? And then while you're doing that, you're probably going to reflect and be like, what am I doing? Why do I have to do this? This is stupid. I jump through these hoops, and for this stupid society that isn't even a good society. It kills things. It kills people. It uses animals as flesh, and it's parasitic and all this stuff. It's like, what am I? But it's like, that's the beauty. That's the beauty of life, is you find those answers. And what I believe personally is, I believe if you do really ask those questions, and you start to really question the existence and the purpose of life, you do find God. That's what I think. I think you find God. So in a way, you could say this book is about a man trying to find God. You could say this book is about, because he's trying to find meaning, hence, vis-a-vis, he's trying to find God. He's trying to find the purpose of life, right? It's interesting, man, and it's also, maybe there's elements of the Matrix, like escaping the Matrix a little bit, because, when you question what you're doing, when you're like, what am I doing this for? Why am I doing this? You start to want to leave the Matrix. You start to want to find something different. You don't want to be in the board game. You don't want to play the games anymore. You kind of want to leave the board game and be your own person, and be your own, you don't want to be in this parasitic slave system that is the Matrix, and so maybe you could say that this is he's trying to find a way out. He's trying to find a way out of his day-to-day life, which is he has to go and catch these fish in order to survive. It's interesting. Really good book, man. Really good book. I think Hemingway, I think he did all of that mostly on purpose. I do think so. I think he knew what he was doing. I don't think I don't think any of that's by accident. I think he was. I think it's a brilliant, brilliant piece of work. Man, it's a masterpiece. I haven't gotten too much into Hemingway. I've read a little bit of his short stories. I've tried to read Farewell to Arms. Didn't really work. Sometimes I'll try to read a book and I just can't get into it. It doesn't work. So I don't know. Some people say Farewell to Arms is his mea culpa, his greatest work. Some people say I forget what the other one was, but there's a couple that people think are his masterpieces. But for me, it's The Old Man and the Sea. For sure. Hands down, it's The Old Man and the Sea for me. So, great book. Go listen to the audiobook. Charlton Heston's wonderful. Really cool stuff here, but also, I would also say, the last thing I would say is that I do like the friendship between the old man and the kid, because it touches on male gentleness, which I think is something that gets swept under the rug, and it touches on like a little bit of mentorship, I guess you could say, a little bit, and it's an element that we seem to lack in our society, where older men kind of take younger men under their wing and kind of show them the ropes and kind of pass down values. And I think that's something that has been attacked and damaged in our society, and just it's been, the way the world is, and you're tired all the time, so it's hard to it makes it hard for that kind of thing to happen. And I think that's so lacking in our society, is that we need more older men who are, kind of shepherding or kind of mentoring younger men in the elements of being a man, and learning male values and things like that. And part of that is, hard work and, overcoming odds and things like that. But anyway, yeah, it's a super cool book, man. It's a lot deeper than you might think. You might read it the first time and just not really pick up on much, and just kind of, oh, it's a good story. It's well written. It's cool, but it's kind of simple, But there's a lot more going on. I like that Google explanation about the deeper meaning hidden below the surface, kind of the iceberg theory or whatever. I think that's perfect. I think that really, really sums it up and describes it very well. Because it seems very concise, straightforward, realistic. It seems very, paints wonderful pictures, right? The simplicity of that setting and that scene, but there's so much going on beneath the surface there. Anyway, I appreciate you listening. Take care.